There is a presence that's terrifying in its quiet, unspoken power. It doesn't need to speak. It doesn't need to impress. It doesn't even need to exist loudly. It is the presence of the void, a man who offers nothing, no emotion, no need, no validation, no approval. He stands there like a mirror, forcing everyone around him to fill the silence, to interpret the blankness, to project their own insecurities, their desires, into the empty space he has created. And as they do, he takes control, not by overpowering them, but by making them collapse into themselves. This is Machiavelli's hidden law. Offer them nothing, and they will give you everything. When you become the void, you force others to do the work. You become ungraspable, unknowable, unreadable. In a world where everyone is screaming to be understood, your silence becomes their obsession. Your absence, your lack of hunger, becomes the very thing that draws them in. Because here's the truth. People are not drawn to what they can predict. They are drawn to what they cannot decode. And when you withhold everything, your attention, your emotion, your opinion, your identity, you create a vacuum. Humans hate the unknown. They hate ambiguity, but they're addicted to it. So when you give them nothing, they lean in. They ask more. They chase more. They offer more. Just to understand you. Just to define you. Just to gain a foothold in your world. And here is where true power begins. Not when you declare yourself, but when you let others declare for you. When you speak, they can judge you. But when you say nothing, they must guess. And in their guessing, they give away more than you ever would have. This is the genius behind Machiavelli's law of the void. You win not by fighting, but by not showing up to the fight at all. And still, they lose. Most people overshare. They overexplain. They overexpose. They believe that being known equals being respected. But the more you reveal, the more they categorize you. The more you express, the more they limit you. And worst of all, the more you offer, the less valuable you become. When something is always available, always visible, always predictable, it is never feared, never wanted deeply. It is just there. It becomes background noise. But when you become nothing, you become everything. You become a space people rush to fill. You become the question no one can answer. You become the silent presence in a loud room, forcing everyone to lower their voice. This is not passive. It's weaponized emptiness, a deliberate strategy. You do not withdraw because you are insecure. You withdraw because you understand that silence builds altitude. That ambiguity builds obsession. That being unknown is the highest form of leverage. Think of the most powerful figures in history. Not the loud ones, but the ones who said little and yet dominated every room they entered. Marcus Aurelius, watching the empire crumble without complaint. Genghis Khan, offering false treaties before total destruction. Machiavelli himself, writing in exile, speaking to the few while his silence screamed to the many. The ones who revealed the least often shaped the most. Even in nature, this law holds. The black hole devours galaxies not by radiating light, but by pulling it in. The ocean has power, not because it announces itself, but because of its depth, its mystery, its refusal to be held. When you become the void, you move like that, still, quiet, heavy with meaning, and others feel it, even if they can't articulate it. They sense your detachment, your restraint, your self-possession. And that unreachable energy is what makes you magnetic. This is why the most dangerous man is not the one who talks, but the one who watches. Not the one who needs, but the one who offers nothing. He doesn't react. He doesn't seek. He doesn't impress. And because of that, everyone around him becomes reactive, desperate, performative, trying to draw him out, trying to make him visible. But he remains still. And in that stillness, he controls the room. Understand this. The void makes others confess. When you're silent, they talk more. When you're cold, they offer warmth. When you withhold, they overshare. And every time they give more to fill your nothingness, they lose leverage. You don't steal it. It is surrendered. That is why you must never rush to be known. Never fight to be understood. Never give them your full shape. Blur the edges. Let them wonder. Let them chase. Because the more they chase, the more they invest. And the more they invest, the more they obey. The modern world punishes mystery. It wants you loud, transparent, emotionally exposed. But that's because it fears silence. It fears the man who doesn't need to be known, because he cannot be controlled. He cannot be framed. He cannot be tamed. The man who becomes the void doesn't just escape judgment. He becomes the one who judges, because everyone else is dancing for attention, and he's not even clapping. And yet, everyone waits for his move. You must train yourself in this. It will feel unnatural at first. You will want to speak, to respond, to declare your truth. Don't. You are not here to be understood. You are here to be felt. And the less you give, the more they feel. Every unanswered question becomes a hook. Every delayed reply becomes an emotional investment. Every moment you choose silence over reaction adds to your weight. And soon, you're not just a man. They experience you as a force, an element, a presence they cannot ignore. And here's the final layer. The void is not emptiness. It's discipline. It's control. You feel everything, but you show almost nothing. You calculate before you speak. You delay before you act. You never reveal your hand unless you've already won the game. And in doing so, you rise above the emotional economy. You become untouchable, not because you fight harder, but because you refuse to play their game. When someone attacks you, you offer nothing. When someone demands answers, you offer nothing. When someone begs for validation, you offer nothing. Because the moment you offer something, you enter their frame and your power dies in their hands. But when you become the void, they shape themselves around you. That is Machiavelli's law of the void. And it's not just a strategy. It's a way of being. The man who offers nothing is the man they give everything to. The moment you internalize this law, that offering nothing creates everything you begin to, understand the fundamental asymmetry of power. Influence does not come from giving more. It comes from holding back. Because when you offer less, what you do give becomes amplified. A glance, a word, a movement. Suddenly, it all means something. Because you've made your presence rare. You've made your responses expensive. And in a world drowning in noise, what is rare becomes divine. Most men dilute themselves without even realizing it. They talk too much. They react too fast. They reveal too early. They explain, justify, and confess in the name of honesty or connection. But every revelation is a transaction. Every emotional disclosure is a gamble. And most of the time, it's a losing bet. The more you give, the more they measure you. The more they measure you, the more they control you. And the more they control you, the less you matter. That's the hidden cost of openness. You become predictable. But the void cannot be measured because it does not reveal. It absorbs, it watches, it waits. And in that waiting, it grows heavier. It dominates space without action, presence without performance. And this is what unnerves people. Not that you're doing too much, but that you're doing nothing. And still, they feel your weight. Imagine this in a negotiation. Two people sit across from each other. One speaks quickly, trying to persuade, to explain, to fill the silence. The other just watches, silent, neutral. Who holds the power? The one who says nothing. His silence forces the other into exposure. It creates discomfort. And in that discomfort, they start offering more than they intended. More details, more concessions, more truth. That is the power of the void. It is not passive. It is a trap. The Machiavellian man learns to master this art. He trains his face to be unreadable. He trains his voice to be measured. He trains his energy to be restrained. Not because he is suppressing himself, but because he knows that expression is power and power must be used, not leaked. To express everything is to give away the throne. To express nothing is to make others bring their offerings to you. This is not about becoming emotionally dead. It is about becoming strategically empty. To be full of awareness, but empty in expression. To feel everything but show almost nothing. That discipline is what makes you terrifying. Because people can sense you're not numb, but they can't read you. They feel the fire behind your eyes, but they don't know what it's burning for. That's what draws them in. Not what you reveal, but what you refuse to. Now, Apply this to relationships. Most people give too much too soon. They pour their thoughts, their past, their emotions into someone else's lap, hoping it will build intimacy. But it doesn't. It builds familiarity, and familiarity kills mystery. The person who gives too much is loved for convenience, not for power. But when you give nothing, no emotional validation, no explanation of your feelings, no desperate attempts to be understood, do you become fascinating. People lean in, trying to figure you out. They assign depth to your silence. They imagine complexity in your restraint. And in that imagination, they create your legend. Because here's the truth, most won't admit. People don't fall in love with you. They fall in love with what they imagine you are. And the less you give, the more space they have to project. If you want to be remembered, don't explain yourself. Let them wonder. Let them obsess. Let them try to make sense of you in your absence. That's how you haunt them long after you've left the room. Even enemies are weakened by this law. A man who insults you expects a reaction. He expects emotion. He wants to see if he hit the mark. If you respond, even in fury, you confirm his relevance. But if you remain still, blank, unbothered, you deny him everything. And in that denial, you win, because he cannot read your silence. He cannot feed off your energy. And eventually, he begins to question himself. Did I miss? Did he not care? Did I even matter? And doubt, once planted, grows like rot. You didn't destroy him with force. You destroyed him with emptiness. Machiavelli understood this on a political level. He advised rulers to be feared more than loved, but more importantly, to remain mysterious. The prince who shows all his cards invites betrayal, but the one who moves unpredictably, who speaks sparingly, who reveals only what is necessary, he becomes a legend. People begin to speak about him in whispers. They speculate. They invent stories. And in doing so, they build a myth larger than reality. That is the power of the void. People fill it with their own meaning. Now, this law becomes even more dangerous when combined with presence. If you are nothing and look like nothing, people forget you. But if you are nothing and look like power, like confidence, like danger, you become unforgettable. That contrast is what leaves a mark. The stone-cold eyes in a calm face. The silence that radiates gravity. The unspoken confidence of a man who walks through noise without reacting to any of it. You don't need to convince people of your worth. You need only carry yourself like someone who does not explain. And once they feel that posture, they will either rise to your level or fall trying. Let's take this further. In every situation, your first weapon is silence. Not as a gimmick, but as a test. Say less in meetings. Respond slower in conversations. Offer nothing emotional when confronted. Watch what happens. Most people will trip over themselves to break the silence. They'll overcommit. They'll over-reveal. They'll try to pull you in, and you won't need to do a thing. Because when you are the void, the world reacts to you, and that's the ultimate advantage. You dictate tempo. You control rhythm. You create discomfort by simply existing. This is the opposite of desperation. Most people need to be seen. You do not. Most people need to be liked. You do not. Most people need to be understood. You become powerful because you don't. And your refusal to participate in their emotional economy is what makes you rich in influence. They start to give. They start to chase. They start to open. And all you gave them was nothing. Not because you were withholding, but because you are the void. And in the void, there is no need, only gravity. And gravity always pulls without effort. This is the Machiavellian law that most will never practice, because it demands inner stillness. It demands composure. It demands the strength to not perform. But once you master it, you'll never chase again. Because when you become the void, they will bring you everything just to escape the silence you never try to break. Once you understand that silence is not absence, but dominance, you stop treating expression as power. You start treating containment as control. You realize that the less you offer, the more you are pursued, not because people are kind, but because they are addicted to the unknown. Curiosity is the most manipulative force in human psychology. And when you master the art of offering nothing, you become the source of that addiction. Not through lies, not through seduction, but through your refusal to fill in the blanks. This is not about playing games. This is about removing yourself from the game entirely. You are not unpredictable because you try to be. You are unpredictable because you give them nothing to predict. There is no rhythm to follow, no emotional trail to decode, no pattern to exploit. You become the blank page that drives them insane. Because most people are so accustomed to reading others like cheap books that when they encounter someone with no pages, no narrative, and no explanation, they spiral. And the deeper the spiral, the deeper their investment. Because that's the paradox of the void. The less you give, the more they give. They fill the silence with effort. They project their hopes, their fears, their fantasies into you. They build a version of you so powerful that it overshadows the real thing. And you say nothing. You remain calm. You remain still. You remain unknown.